call the meeting to order. Madam Secretary, please take roll.
Yes, Madam President, all members are accounted for and we have a quorum.
Next, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you all to stand while we recite the pledge. Next, Mr. Klein has an update he'd like to share on negotiations. Mr. Klein.
Thank you, Ms. Spanenberg. As we've been doing on a regular basis since the school year began, I'm going to provide a public report on the status of collective bargaining. As some of you know, we have copies of the statement that I've prepared over at the side table for those who are here attending the meeting this evening. And I understand, Dana, that we'll be able to post those remarks on the website of the district after tonight's meeting. And we'll post that where we've posted the other updates that my colleagues have given during the past several months. Before getting to specifics, I think it's really important that I begin with some context. This is ground we've covered a number of times here in the boardroom during the course of the year, but as we have a larger than normal audience with us tonight, I think it's very important to begin by repeating some key facts. The district and the Teachers Association last entered a contract in August of 2010. That contract expired about 6 months ago, and since that time, the district and the Teachers Association have been involved in negotiations seeking agreement on a new contract for this current academic year. Now, as anyone who's been involved in collective bargaining can tell you, collective bargaining is hard work. And so I want to start by acknowledging the time and effort that's been given by everyone in the process. A very hard-working group of teachers from the Carmel Clay Education Association, and I see some of those folks here in the room tonight. And we've had an equally devoted team from the district. Some of those folks are sitting here with me tonight. Mr. McMichael, Mr. Newman is not here, but he's been on the team, and Mr. Phillips has been on our team as well. During the past 6 months, I think it's fair to say we've spent a lot of hours together. All told, our teams have met 12 times together, including 2 times in mediated sessions. And we've met any number of times separately as teams seeking solutions in what is undoubtedly a very, very challenging environment. Now, I call this a challenging environment because an awful lot has changed since the last time that we came together and agreed to a contract in August of 2010. Most notably, the state of Indiana has passed a package of education reform laws significantly impacting the way that public schools do business in this state, including the business of collective bargaining. I'm going to highlight a few of those changes in just a moment, but before I do that, let me emphasize that these are state-mandated changes. These aren't rules passed by local school boards, and quite frankly, it doesn't matter if this group collectively or individually agree or disagree with the legislators' determinations. We are obligated to follow state law. All 5 of us have taken an oath to follow state law, and I can assure you that all 5 of us take that oath very seriously. So with that context, let's look at some of the changes that we're confronting. First, state law now prohibits the board from bargaining over or including in any contract anything other than salary, wages, or salary and wage-related fringe benefits. All right, as with any new law, those terms do require some interpretation. And in the first instance, that interpretation will be provided to us by the executive branch of government, the branch of government that executes the law. For laws relating to public education, we look to guidance from the Indiana Department of Education, the Indiana Education Employment Relations Board, we call that IERB, as well as the State Board of Accounts. And indeed, during the past year to year and a half, These agencies have provided very specific guidance on what is and is not the subject of collective bargaining in the state of Indiana. So from the beginning of this round of negotiations, our board has consistently stated that we will not deviate from state agency guidance on what is bargainable, and that we will not enter into a contract that violates state guidance. That has been an important principle for the board, and frankly, it's been a point of disagreement with the association during our negotiations. Now, of course, we recognize that this means that many items from previous contracts cannot be part of contracts going forward. And as the bargaining process began to unfold, it became clear that these changes would understandably lead to some level of uncertainty and anxiety. So the board addressed this in public in our September business meeting when our president, Ms. Spannenberg, stated that even though most non-economic items are no longer enforceable in collective bargaining, the district would nonetheless continue to follow what had previously been agreed upon unless or until the board decides to make changes through a review process. Next, another key change brought about by state law is that the time period for collective bargaining of a contract is very limited to approximately 5 months. If we do not reach an agreement in that short period of time, each side, the district and the union, makes a proposal to a fact finder. That's essentially an arbitrator. And the fact finder then has to select one proposal or the other. There's no splitting the difference once that point is reached, and the decision of that fact finder is final. Now, in addition, the law prohibits a fact finder from accepting a proposal that would spend more money than the district receives from the state in the current year. That means that a fact finder cannot approve a proposal that would utilize any part of the district's cash reserves. Now, I'm going to pause here, and this is important because there's some very confusing terminology in the law in this area. The law calls these final proposals that I've just described the last best offers of each side. But in a financially sound district like ours, the last best offer is hardly the best offer the board can truly make. In fact, in our case, the board's actual best offer is worth literally millions of dollars more than our so-called last best offer that the law obligates us to make as part of the fact-finding process. Our true best offer was left on the table after our last mediation session. Our true best offer remains on the table as I speak tonight. Now, this really isn't new information. My colleague, Mr. Phillips, gave a report during our October business meeting, and most of what I plan to say next is very similar to what Mr. Phillips explained back in October. But before I return to those details, the key takeaway here is that the board's best offer, its true best offer, which again has been left on the table, would have the district provide an additional $5.3 million of compensation in 2013 compared to what was provided in 2012. To do that, our district is prepared to dip into its cash reserves for almost $3.5 million. That means the board has made an offer to spend about a quarter of its cash reserves for additional compensation in a one-year contract. And the board made that offer knowing that this money would not be available if we were forced into fact-finding, but we made the offer because we thought doing so was in the best interests of our teachers, in the best interests of our students, and at the end of the day, in the best interests of our public. Now, the details, and again, much of this is what Mr. Phillips went through in October. We offered every teacher a base salary increase averaging about 2.5%. We offered a $1,500 raise to every teacher in the district, except those who are brand new teachers or those at the top of the pay scale. For those individuals, we offered a 1% pay increase. In addition, we offered a 1% of base salary pay as a stipend to the teachers, to each teacher, in the coming academic year. In addition, we offered to make all of these increases retroactive to the beginning of the academic year. Putting all of that together, salary and stipend, that's an expenditure from the district of $2.27 million for salary and stipend. In addition, we offered a performance bonus pool of $500,000 that would be distributed after the school year to every teacher who received either an effective or highly effective rating in the spring's evaluation, an additional $500,000. In addition, we offered 5 days of paid professional development by which teachers could earn an additional $1,250. We calculated that as a global cost of about $1.125 million. In addition, for every teacher who elects to take our high-deductible health savings account insurance plan, the board offered to contribute $2,000 to each teacher's health savings account if he or she was on a family plan, or $1,000 to any teacher who was on an individual plan. Cost of that part of the offer, about $925,000. In addition, the district also increased its contribution for health insurance premiums by 10%. That costs about $520,000. So the total financial value of the offer that we placed on the table, that remains on the table, is a little better than $5.3 million. Again, that's about $3.5 million more than we are allowed to spend by law if we are forced to go through the fact-finding process. Now, one issue regarding our True Best offer that has raised a number of questions to the board in emails and phone calls and conversations is that our True Best offer did not include a salary schedule that maps out future pay increases based on experience and credentials. Let me briefly explain why, because that has generated quite a number of questions. We are negotiating what amounts to a transitional contract. The new law from the state of Indiana requires that all public school contracts now align with the state's biennial budget. Our contract is ending in the middle of that biennial period, so what we agree to now, or what gets imposed on us by a fact finder, is only going to expire, or I should say is only going to last and will expire in about 7 months. Everybody here knows that we're going to need a structure after that to address how young teachers will move up the pay scale, and clearly the board is going to address that when we start the negotiation process again next August. But at that time, we are also going to be required to consider a combination of statutory factors in setting compensation. We will have completed our first cycle of evaluations, which will have to be part of the compensation conversation by state law. And we also anticipate by that time that we'll have much clearer guidance from the state on what is permissible and what is not under the new laws that I've described to you this evening. Now, before I wrap up, let me emphasize, or actually re-emphasize, a few key points and facts. Because of these significant changes in state law, we are effectively operating in uncharted waters. And I want to fully acknowledge that doing so is difficult for everybody involved in the process. Second, I want to re-emphasize that the board has an offer on the table for a 1-year contract that will provide about $5.3 million more in compensation in 2013 than was spent in 2012. That would include spending about 25% of the district's cash balance. I seriously doubt that there are many, if any, districts in the state of Indiana with the ability to make an offer of that financial magnitude this year. Now, one key reason we have the ability to make an offer like that is because our community has helped put us in a place where we are on very stable financial footing. This helps the board make an offer that uses cash reserves to supplement the otherwise constrained state funding that would make up the rest of our offer. The board, however, has been very mindful that we are making an offer with public tax dollars. So we have been very intentional and very careful in the way we've structured the offer. Our offer includes not just a base salary increase, but also, as I have described, pay for professional development, which should be designed to improve classroom effectiveness, which should benefit students. It includes bonus pay for performance, which is consistent with the concept in state law that will require us to consider evaluations in setting compensation next year. It also creates financial incentives for teachers to move to the high-deductible health savings account insurance plan. I should note that if a teacher took advantage of everything that we've offered, the base pay increase, the stipend, the performance bonus, the pay for professional development, the financial incentives for the health savings account, a teacher's compensation for this year has the potential to rise almost 10% over what it was last year. But of course, our offer has to be accepted for anyone to take advantage of those proposals. As I said at the outset of my remarks, collective bargaining is a difficult process. The purpose of the presentation tonight, as with the previous presentations from my board colleagues, not designed to make accusations or to play politics, but really just to create a factual record of where the board stands regarding the state of negotiations as of this evening. My sincere hope, and I know the sincere hope of all four of my colleagues, is that we reach an agreement along the lines of our true best offer very soon, and that we avoid having a fact finder impose a less desirable contract on us. Ms. Mandenberg, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Are there any questions or comments?
Madam President, I actually, could I ask Mr. Klein for just a couple clarifications, because this is so important?
Sure.
Realizing teachers are all different and all in different circumstances. If I'm understanding you correctly, if a teacher took advantage of everything and was able to take advantage of everything that's on the board's standing offer, that teacher could receive a compensation of up or close to 10%, an increase of close to 10%?
Correct. If a teacher took advantage of each of those things that I listed, teacher would have the potential to get an increase in compensation for this year of close to 10%.
By law, this true best offer, and that's the language you use, I think that's interesting, can only span one contract year.
Correct. Point is that under state law, all public school contracts now have to track the state's biennial budget. Our contract expired in the middle of a budget year, so we can only agree to a one-year contract this year. Whatever happens, hopefully we settle. If we don't, the fact finder imposes a contract on us. Bargaining will begin next August for a 2-year contract.
Okay, thank you. My third point I would like clarified. According to new law also, the board had to make an offer which isn't as generous because it couldn't include cash balance to the fact finder. Though law refers to this as the last best offer, it isn't really what the board considers its true best offer, to use the language you used, or what we really want the teachers to have. We have a true best offer on the table.
Correct.
Still.
The nomenclature to me is unfortunate. The proposal that we make to the fact finder cannot put the district in what the statute defines as deficit spending. That means we can't use cash reserves in the offer we send to the fact finder. The law calls that the last best offer. In our district, that's not the best offer we can make. I've described the best offer that we've put on the table, which includes $3.5 million of cash balance that cannot by law be included in our last best offer.
So that offer, just as a final clarification, that offer, that true best offer, is still on the table until the fact finder renders an opinion. But we as a board cannot impose that. It must be accepted at this point.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the report and getting that information out, and I just wanted to make sure certain things were very, very clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, Layla. Andy, I've done a little calculation over here. I think the difference between the last best offer, and the board's true offer is something of the order of $3.5 million. Is that correct?
I think Rod and Mr. McMichael would agree that's approximately correct.
Okay, so, and we have 920 teachers that would be affected? Pretty close?
That's pretty close.
Okay, and if my calculator tells the truth this evening, that would be a difference to each teacher in the district of right about just less than $3,700.
On average.
On average, $3,700. And as my friend Mrs. Hackett brought out, the association at this moment has the power to choose the board's best offer if they want to. Am I right?
We have not withdrawn that offer.
So then I guess I have to ask myself, and maybe you can help me, Andy, why wouldn't the association want to take an offer that could benefit each teacher $3,700 in the next 7 months?
Again, I don't know that's my role. Our offer is on the table.
Okay. I hope the association can answer that question for the teachers that are going to do without that financial benefit from the board.
Mrs. Knowles.
Yes, I just noticed in some of the correspondences that we've been receiving that there was a comment made that Carmel is the last district to settle in the state of Indiana. And I received information from IURB, and IURB has listed 151 corporations that didn't even negotiate this year. So they are not negotiating now, but will possibly be negotiating at the end of 2013. And there are 30 corporations at over that. So they have negotiated contracts that will end after that. So at this point, it doesn't look like Carmel is the last district to settle in the state of Indiana, because there are a lot of districts who never went to negotiations this year at all.
Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Okay, next we're going to move to special presentations, and Dr. Swenson's going to lead us with these.
Thank you very much, Madam President, members of the board, distinguished guests, fellow colleagues, and most of all, honored students. It gives me great pleasure to begin our special presentations this evening with something we do twice a year, and that's to honor and to celebrate our young artists. And here to help do that is our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, Amy Dudley.
Thank you, Dr. Swenson. It is my pleasure this evening to present the Young Artist recipients. And before I start calling the young artists up here to collect their certificate, first I'd like to really appreciate the work that our fine art teachers do with our young artists. Because as you can see, the work that we have displayed behind us, this is the work of our young artists, and it's just quite amazing the work that these kids do. And it is in part by the great work that the art teachers do. So if you are an art teacher here in the audience, if you could stand up to be acknowledged. Thank you. And now I will call our young artists up, and if they would collect their certificate from Dr. Swenson and then come over here, and when we're finished with everybody, we'll have them go and shake the hand of our board members. We have Lucy Bear, a third grade student at Carmel Elementary. Alex McKev, an 11th grade student at Carmel High School. Remy Meeker, an 8th grade student at Carmel Middle School. Jessica Paz, a 5th grade student at Cherry Tree Elementary. Samantha Romero, a 6th grade student at Clay Middle School. Chase Hutchinson, a 1st grade student at Collegewood Elementary. Tanya Baratula, a 6th grade student at Creekside Middle School. Reagan West, a 5th grade student at Forestdale Elementary. Hunter Harkins, a 2nd grade student at Mohawk Trails Elementary. Esther Liu, a 4th grade student at Orchard Park Elementary. Suraj Sandramali, a 4th grade student at Prairie Trace Elementary. Colette Klaus, a 5th grade student at Smoky Row Elementary. Veronica Teeter, a 5th grade student at Town Meadow Elementary. Aubrey Umphrey, a 5th grade student at West Clay Elementary. And Samantha Jackson, a 3rd grade student at Woodbrook Elementary. Congratulations to our young artists. If you'd like to go and shake the hands of the board members, that'd be great.
Just so parents know, when we're finished with our presentations, we will pause, so you'll have an opportunity to take some photos, so don't fret.
With that very appropriate reminder in mind, we have next some very special awards to be presented by Ms. Stephanie Payne, who is a counselor at Carmel High School, concerning the ACT test and some spectacular achievement by our students. Ms. Payne.
Good evening. I am here to introduce 4 students who have received the highest achievement of earning a perfect score of a 36 on the ACT test. This is quite an achievement. The ACT is made up of 4 different tests. There's an English section, a math section, a science reasoning section, and a reading section. And each section can earn a score of a 36. And then you have an average composite score. It's very rare to have a student earn this high achievement, and we had 4 students within the last year. So we're very proud of you. Heinrich Gloninger. Christoph Gloninger. Humphrey Lynn. And Samuel Patterson. Congratulations.
Championship performance in art and scholastic endeavors are often highlighted during these sessions. It gives me great pride to now highlight, with the help of Assistant Athletic Director Bruce Wolf, some outstanding student athletes from Carmel High School who have achieved the highest honor in their various sports. Mr. Wolf.
Thanks very much. want to begin by thanking the board administration for giving us this opportunity to recognize these student athletes once again. We had an outstanding fall season highlighted by Carmel claiming all 8 MIC Conference championships in the fall sports, and 3 of our sports earning state runner-up honors and 3 earning state championship honors, and those state championship teams are the ones we'd like to recognize at this time. Our first state champion team this fall was our boys tennis team. They finished the season with a 21-1 record and completed a three-peat by winning this year's state championship. In addition to the team state championship, seniors Charlie Emhart and Daniel Rodefeld claimed the double state championship, and at this time I would ask head coach Mike Bostic to come up and introduce the young men who are here.
I support Chuck Pagano and the Colts, but I always look this way. How about those cheerleaders, though, that was so cool. I have senior Charlie Emhart here tonight. Taylor Farmer, Nick Hennessy, and Zach Hennessy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you much, guys. Our next team to win a state championship this fall was our girls cross country team. This year's team is also on a three-peat. This is their 3rd in a row. And it's important to mention that they are undefeated in any meet during those entire 3 years. Head coach is Mark Ellington, and he's here to introduce our student athletes.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. I'd like to add one thing. This group of young ladies, we're actually short one tonight, but this group of young ladies is also going to be traveling to Portland, Oregon this weekend to compete in Nike's National Cross Country event, of which they finished 7th 2 years ago, 5th place last year, and we're hoping for top 3 this year. So it's been a pretty extraordinary few years, and this group continues to impress even on a national level. Anna Schmitz, Kelsey Harris, Haley Harris, Samantha Dalby, Kelsey Welch, and our lone senior who will be attending Northwestern University next year, Ellen Schmitz. Anna, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Gee.
And our final team to win a state championship this fall is our boys cross country team. Along with the team state championship, I want to mention that senior Charlie Watson was named the IHSAA State Mental Attitude Award winner, which is the highest individual honor presented by the IHSAA in any sport. Our head coach is Erhard Bell, and he's here to introduce the young men. Also traveling to Portland, you might mention that.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. I want to present the 7 people who ran our state meet this year. The boys won for the first time since 2008, and they are senior Charlie Watson, as mentioned, he did win the Mental Attitude Award and was the first boys cross-country runner to win that from Carmel High School. Also, senior Jaden Wilson. could not join us tonight, but senior Corey Turner. Next, our lone all-state runner, junior Bobby Browning. Junior Ben Anderson. Junior Michael George. And lastly, our freshman phenom, Benjamin Veach. Also, I'd like to briefly acknowledge my two outstanding assistant coaches, Colin Altivotes and Nathan Price. And also mention that we're thrilled to be joining the girls. We're also going to Portland, Oregon for the Nationals this Saturday. Thank you.
Once again, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We next turn with a significant combination of national honor and state honor to our marching Greyhounds. And to celebrate the accomplishment of the marching Greyhounds, a double championship that will be explained in just a minute, here is Assistant Band Director Andy Cook from Carmel High School.
Thank you. Thank you, Board, for all your support of all of our students. We have 220 in the marching band, grade 9 through 12. For the sake of brevity, we didn't bring them all in. They work very, very hard, hours and hours on the pavement and the football field. We started for ISMA at the district level, and then they have a semi-state, a regional, and then the state. We won all 4 of those. The following week, Bands of America hosts their national competition at Lucas Oil, which we're fortunate to have in our backyard. And there was over 100 bands from, I think, over 30 states. And we won the prelims on Thursday. We won semifinals on Saturday afternoon, and we won finals for the national championship that evening, so scoring a 95.85. So thank you. Because of that, we have been invited to participate in the Rose Bowl Parade, not in a month, but in a year and a month, so we have accepted that offer. So I'm sorry if there's band members pounding on your door to ask for money, but we got to raise a lot of money. But we are planning on going to that in a year and a month and representing the high school and the community at the Rose Bowl Parade in Pasadena. Representing the band tonight of our 3 student conductors, 2 seniors and a junior. They're the main leaders, are the ones that conduct the band out on the field, and it's Mackenzie Gerber, Carrie Polovich, and junior Vincent Maggioli. Thank you.
Along with celebrating the absolutely outstanding national and state accomplishments of our students, everyone here has noted the accompaniment, if you please, of a great teacher or 2 or 3. There's no question that the adult leadership in all of these categories is vital, and this next award goes to an individual member of our staff. It is the Robert and Eleanor Hall Memorial Scholarship, and that award will be presented by Dr. Dudley.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to honor Mrs. Tracy Braza. Tracy, if you want to come on up. Tracy is one of our instructional specialists that works with our middle school teachers and our high school teachers, and she was awarded the Robert G. and Eleanor T. Hall Scholarship. And this scholarship was awarded to 10 outstanding teachers around the country. Tracy was one of those recipients. And it's rewarded to exemplary educators for the innovative instructional strategies they use to help dyslexic students achieve at the highest levels. And this scholarship allowed Tracy to attend the International Dyslexic Association Conference last month. And so Tracy will share her knowledge that she gained at this conference, and also the knowledge she has gained throughout the years, because she has been working very hard to really help teachers to understand what those best practices are to help kids that do have dyslexic in the classroom. And Tracy is organizing a variety of different professional development opportunities for teachers to share that knowledge so that we can help students in our classrooms. So congratulations to Tracy for her efforts in education and her dedication to our students.
Last but certainly not least, it's my abiding pleasure and privilege as superintendent to call forward an entire elementary school or their representatives. Not everyone could be here this evening. May I ask for Assistant Principal Jill Smith and those colleagues from Smoky Row Elementary who are here to come forward and take their places, and then I'll do a brief bit of explaining. As I indicated, it's my honor and privilege as superintendent to have before you not quite the entire staff, but certainly energy that represents that great entire staff, because the entire staff, the students, and families of Smoky Row Elementary have just been awarded by the President of the United States the National Blue Ribbon School Award for this current year, and it is with great pride and pleasure that I call them to your attention. I commend them and the entire school community, and we honor them, if you please, with a wondrous round of applause. And as they go forward, I know that the Smoky Row staff would certainly say that shaking hands with our board is easily the equivalent of shaking hands with the president.
Okay, as promised, we will break for a photo opportunity for all parents and families, and we'll take just a few minutes, and I'll tap when we're ready to begin. So if you would like to take pictures, or if you need to leave to go study, since you might have a number of things that are due tomorrow, please feel free to do so. Moving on to public participation, I'd like to remind those speaking to please state your name and address for the record. You'll have 2 minutes to share your thoughts with the board. The colored lights at the podium are to be used as a visual reminder. The yellow illuminates when you have 30 seconds remaining, and the red will signify you have 2 minutes, or your 2 minutes have expired and an audible beep might sound. So with that, the first individual we have listed is Sherry Jones.
Okay, my name is Sherry Jones, and I live at 14246 Autumn Woods Drive. This is our first year with a child in Carmel Clay Public School District. Our children have previously attended private school or a charter school in another state. I come from a long line of educators, and I'm currently the president of a college in downtown Indianapolis. In fact, when I was appointed to my current position, I was excited to have the opportunity to live in Carmel, where I was familiar with the reputation of Carmel Clay School District and intentionally selected to live in a neighborhood where my children would be eligible to attend its blue ribbon school, Smoky Row. I am passionate about education, and from my own work experiences, I know firsthand the challenges that exist in meeting all standards, even striving to exceed academic performance standards in our current environment with a multitude of priorities to compete with. One area of opportunity and challenge that faces all of us as educators and parents is providing sufficient physical activity to our growing and developing children. The FDA, National Institute of Health, and the Heart Association recommend at least 60 minutes of physical activity for children daily. Indiana Healthy Weight Initiative recommends at least 30 minutes of physical activity for children daily during the school day. Currently, students receive a maximum of 15 minutes of recess time daily. Physical activity helps children maintain healthy weight, promotes cognitive and academic performance, and provides an outlet for child's creative, social, and emotional development. In today's environment, where children's daily lives are filled with sedentary tasks, physical activity becomes even more important for developing healthy, lifelong habits. I want to conclude by thanking each of you for your meaningful contributions to the excellent school district. Our experience with the school and school district to this point have been nothing but positive. I do urge the board, however, to evaluate ways in which additional physical activity can be allotted to our school-age children during the school day without lengthening the school day. I believe many parents would support this initiative, and I would be happy to donate my time or expertise to assist to support this measure. I've also included a handout with a list of references and studies that support the role physical activity plays in children's development and academic performance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Rebecca Wharton.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Wharton, and I live at 5159 Crane Lane. I have a 5th grader and a 9th grader. I understand that the district is thinking of implementing some technology changes based upon the outcome of the national survey Speak Out conducted last year. I have some concerns about this. In my opinion, the survey is poorly constructed in that it does not allow the responder to be age-specific in their choice of responses. Although at the beginning of the Parent Speak Out survey it asks which level of schooling your child is in, at no point during the rest of the survey are the questions tailored to those differing ages. I would like to share with you a couple of example questions where the answers that may be given would differ depending on which age group you are targeting. Question 11. Many schools are now providing online classes for their students where the instruction and content is delivered primarily over the internet. Based upon what you know about online classes, what would be the most important benefits to your child of taking online classes as part of their education? Check all that apply. My response to this for an elementary child would be very different to that of a high schooler. Personally, I would not want any elementary child taking online courses to learn their ABCs and rudiments of learning. This, to my mind, is where the child learns to interact with the teacher, learns to formulate and ask questions. Now, for a high schooler, I could see that this is quite a potential to supplement their learning. Another example would be question 27. If you were on a technology committee for new schools, which of these would you recommend as a good investment to enhance student achievement? Check all that apply. One of the options is online textbooks. In our elementary school, the only online textbook we have encountered is Everyday Math, where we've looked up the unit in question and read the one page of the textbook. My high schooler has made notes from his textbooks, would rather not use online as it's so user-unfriendly. It's difficult to cross-reference, flick back and forth, make notes. Now, if this book was in an e-reader format, it would be a different technology. I feel the survey is an example of ask the wrong questions, get the wrong answers, rubbish in, rubbish out. In my opinion, these results, I'm going to carry on the last sentence. In my opinion, these results surveys make a poor source of information for the district to base its technology strategy for our schools. In the past, the district has always been meticulous in doing the research for the best before implementing changes. Please do the same for our technology.
Thank you. Next, we have Sherry Pankratz.
Sherry Pankratz, 316 Lexington Boulevard. I found it necessary to address the board this evening after reading your last best offer proposed to IRB. It comes as no surprise that the board and the CCEA disagree on available money. It's no surprise that the two sides disagree on what can and cannot be negotiated into a contract. Only Congress surpasses us in unproductive division. But what is surprising is how the top school system in the state can be so regressive in the treatment of its employees. Specifically, the removal of a 1% match to our 403B accounts, which 95% of the teachers take part in, and shifting those funds to salaries so that Carmel Clay schools will seem, quote, even more competitive, unquote, compared to other school systems? How do we send our brightest to Harvard, MIT, and Stanford and fail to grasp the importance of retirement benefits? Your message is quite clear. We want new teachers who won't stay very long. Most businesses have simplified their leave issues through paid time off. The state took away unpaid leaves, but this board has made the situation worse. Your proposal nitpicks personal days and sick days, refuses to allow a woman who has given birth to a child to use her personal leave time without a doctor's excuse, and reduces personal days that have been in our contract for decades by 50%. The reason in your proposal is the new focus on achievement, which means that teachers need to be in the classroom. Achievement isn't a new focus at Carmel Clay schools. People get sick, babies are born, life happens. We work with our students on these realities every day. We have worked with administration to make transitions for students as smooth as possible when teachers have to be absent. For example, only returning from an extended leave at the beginning of a grading period. Responsible professionalism isn't new at Carmel Clay schools. Since Dr. Bennett took office and convinced our state legislature to ingratiate itself into our local schools, I've watched this administration fret over why such a high-performing school district has to dance to the sad tune of failing schools. Yet whenever an opportunity arises in which Carmel Clay schools can be a leader in innovative thinking which might have a positive effect on educators, you choose not to participate. To me, you seem like the veterinarian who doesn't like animals. Not only do you not enjoy working with them, perhaps you do enjoy when you can make the required processes hurt a little. I hope I'm wrong. I truly hope I'm wrong. But the only way to know is for both sides to get back to the table as reasonable adults who represent quality teachers and a fine community. Thank you.
Next, we have Kanzi Ganzo.
My name is Candy Ganza. I live at 558 Amberleaf Trail. I teach 2-3 Challenge at Forestdale. I'm here tonight. I'm very concerned and disappointed. I've worked for Carmel Clay Schools for 21 years, and I see no future here. I not only don't see a future for myself, I don't see a future for the younger teachers starting out. Not I don't consider myself young. I'm disappointed with the board and the administration in the contents of their last best offer. I agree with them. It was not best. It's not all about money. It's about what the board does not tell you that goes along with the money offer. As part of the negotiation team, I can tell you many of the items in the last best offer were never discussed in negotiations or mediation. A couple of the items are the loss of our 2 personal leave days and being told we would work a longer school day with no compensation, additional compensation. When I began the negotiation process, I had high hopes of setting a fair deal with all involved. Once I read surrounding districts' new contracts under the new laws, I was again hopeful our administration and board would follow their lead and do everything the other districts did to preserve their educators' rights. I have gone through the negotiation process feeling that our administrators and the board are doing everything they can to take away everything from our teachers. Just the opposite. If this contract that was proposed by the administrators and the board is adopted, I guarantee Carmel Clay will lose top quality teachers with no salary scale, with other districts have found a way to keep. It will be impossible to attract top quality teachers who see no future. We won't be the district in the state with the best teachers and the highest test scores anymore. Teachers have a lot of stress with all the new additional work added to their plates this year and are working harder and longer on their own time than ever before and have given students the best education possible. I ask you to come back to the table and show your teachers that you really care and respect us for all the hard work we do.
Next we have Sean Peters.
Chart for the visual learners in the group. Come on, I teach elementary. Sean Peters, I teach 4-5 at Forestdale Elementary. I will let this block my face because it, looks better than me in the evening. I just want to, instead of writing something out and delivering it, I thought I'd make a little sort of T-chart, little comparison here of what the last best offer by our school board would give me and what I made last year. Looks like big red 5% decrease. The actual interesting thing is when you take the offer that you so gracefully and graciously, I should say, said is still on the table, that would bump me from what I made last year of $54,515 all the way up to $57,765. I don't take the insurance here, so the HSA isn't appealing to me. So that's the only thing I wouldn't take. However, like the old saying goes, the devil's in the details. I think the true colors were shown by the increase in hours that the administration would like us to work. If I go to an 8-hour day, I go from 1,387.5 required hours, to 1,480. Now, of course, if I add in the extra $1,250, I think it was, to attend that 40-hour work week, I got to add that in. So if I'm dividing 57,765, my grand new total, by 1,520 hours, that brings me up to $38 an hour. Last year I made $39.29 an hour, which still saves me a little bit, but I'm still in the red, 3.3%. Math doesn't lie. Thank you.
Next we have Aaron Merrill.
Hello, I'm Erin Merrill. I live at 10702 Brighton Knoll Parkway North, Noblesville. I am a first grade teacher at Forestdale Elementary. I have been a part of Carmel Clay Schools since 1985 when I moved here with my family as a fourth grader. I attended Carmel Elementary, Forestdale, Carmel Junior High, and graduated from Carmel High School. As a product of Carmel Clay Schools, I had much pride in the system and hoped that one day I would be lucky enough to return to the district as one of its teachers. This dream came true for me in 1999 when I was offered a permanent contract and began my first year of teaching at Carmel Elementary. I was so thankful to be teaching in the best, highest performing school district in Indiana. I was now working amongst the best teachers in the state. I continue to be thankful for my job, thankful that I am able to work with the most dedicated and professional teachers, supportive principals and parents, and amazing children. However, it saddens and sickens me that I cannot say the same for the board and administration. The board's contract offer has left me feeling disrespected, disheartened, and quite frankly, unlucky to be working for a district that thinks so little of its teachers. I have racked my brain trying to figure out why this board continues to want to take from its teachers, the ones that have led their students to the highest test scores and most achieving athletic and performing arts departments in the state. I think we saw that tonight. I have thought a lot about this and cannot come up with answers. It just doesn't make sense. A $12 million referendum was approved by the taxpayers of this school district in 2010. Where has this money gone? What is it being used for? Carmel Clay Schools Understandably, Carmel Clay Schools wants to be the best, but for some reason doesn't want to pay for the best. How does the board plan to continue to attract cream-of-the-crop teachers with this unfair, non-competitive contract? In closing, I am concerned for my future as an employee of Carmel Clay Schools, as well as the future of the system and its students who deserve so much more. To the members of the board and the administration, I encourage you to rethink your offer and go back to the negotiations table. Thank you.
Next, we have Megan Applezon.
Megan Applezon. I live at 11813 Somerset Way East, right down the road. I just want to make mine real quick. I want to talk about shortlist item number 4, discussing the sick bank. I'm speaking on behalf of personal experience. During my second year of teaching, after my mom passed away, 6 months later, my dad was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. I felt the support of my school and backed by administration because I was able to use the sick bank. I used the sick bank to take him to surgery, to his doctor's appointments, to his chemo treatments, and to take care of him on days that he was too sick to get out of bed and get food himself. I'm young in my career, and I want the school system that I'm working for to support me and back me both personally and professionally.
Next, we have, Brandy Bonnie.
My name is Brandy Boney. My address is 4440 Wellington Circle here in Carmel. In an effort for full disclosure, I do in fact work as a teacher here at Carmel Clay Schools, but I'm not here as a teacher. I'm here as a parent. I also have 2 students, a first grader and a third grader at Mohawk Trails Elementary. 5 years ago, when my husband was relocated to central Indiana, we looked at all of the neighborhoods, we looked at all of the areas, and we chose Carmel because of these schools. That's why we're here. We're not the only ones who chose to be here because of these schools. I felt fortunate when I was lucky enough to get a job teaching with in the same school district as my children. We have the same breaks. I felt really strongly about that. But I'm saddened as a parent to see the offer that's been presented. I understand the difference between last best offer and actual best offer, but I think there are a lot of details missing from that actual best offer that weren't presented today. I know there's a lot of concern about what happens at the end of that one-year contract if there's no salary schedule. And based on the last best offer, which appears to give no pay increases except for an annual bonus of up to $582, with that grand exception, there doesn't seem to be any pay increases. So at my current salary of right around $41,000, that means I could work for Carmel for another 20 years and make $41,582. Frankly, that doesn't put in my mind a very solid picture of where we're going insofar as teachers we would attract. That means the teachers at the top end stay until they can retire and probably as soon as they can get out. And then it means that we have a cycle of young teachers and we become a training ground for young teachers. I've worked in a school like that. We don't want to be that school, and that's not where I want my children to be.
Next we have Brian Lyday.
Madam President, members of the board, for the record, my name is Brian Lyday, President of the Carmel Clay Education Association. Cows and cornfields, Old North, these are all things I knew growing up here in Carmel. Maybe some of you remember them as well. Although each of those is now a memory of the past, one thing remains tried and true in our community: Carmel Clay Schools. We were outstanding in test scores back then, won many state championships. We were prepared to become doctors, scientists, judges, United States representatives, teachers, and other leaders of today. Like many others, I'm thankful for the teachers who have enabled all of these accomplishments. Even though most of my teachers have entered a new chapter of their lives, they have left a legacy for those of us teachers who have followed them: excellence. Yet I fear we may retain the motto while losing the foundation of the excellence: our teachers. In a recent survey with over 700 of our teachers responding, 70% reported being dissatisfied, half of those highly dissatisfied, in 5 key areas: the amount of planning and preparation time that they have daily, the amount of work that they're given to do in that little amount of time, the amount of administrative paperwork required of them day in and day out, the process under which they're evaluated, and how unfair and misunderstood it is still today, and the amount of compensation they receive for all of that. The board's last best offer hits teachers in all the right places, in all the wrong ways. It eliminates any mention of preparation time while providing no assurances that this time will not be shifted onto the personal time that teachers already freely contribute. This concern becomes clear reality when teachers see that their workday is in fact being extended without additional compensation. Even with the 2% increase in salary, this increase in a teacher's workday reduces each teacher's hourly rate by 1 to 4% net. That results in a pay cut. These percentage reductions are then added on top of the 5 or 16% being taken from middle and high school teachers who have already given up preparation and supervision periods. In the end, all Carmel teachers are left reductions between 4 and 18% of their take-home. The reduction of personal days, various leaves, and the elimination of our retirement match, coupled with one-time stipends and no possibility of earned increases in our base pay, will lead to only 2 things: high turnover and low tenure. In the end, you may get a fact finder to select your proposal, although I will ask you how this will impact the 70% who are already dissatisfied. Likely, Carmel will become a stop in their career as they find better opportunities elsewhere, thereby adding excellent teachers to that list of things left in Carmel's past. the teachers ask you to reconsider all of whether your offers are really best for our community. Thank you.
Okay, next we're moving on to our district update, which is our Spotlight on Excellence. So I do invite Mr. Harmis, Mrs. Pruitt. Oh, and our last person, Mrs. Voorhees. Thank you.
Well, first of all, after all the kids came up, I thought to myself, you know, I didn't win anything or I didn't earn anything, so I'm pretty humbled to be up here tonight, especially with following those young men and women. Looks like we're off on this. Where are we going? Back? There we go. Again, thank you for allowing us to be here. Social Studies Department Chair Lynn Voorhees and World Language Department Chair Jillian Pruitt. And I are here to discuss a little bit about Fair Isn't Always Equal, a book written by Rick Wormley that we have been following the past couple years. Wormley is a 30-year teaching veteran that trains teachers and principals around the world. Most of us, when we went to school, if we decided not to turn in a paper or an assignment, would just receive that 0, and we'd go ahead and go on. And our teachers, I know mine back in the dark ages, would just say, tough. Go on, you lose, it doesn't matter. And what they were grading, as we've seen nowadays, is responsibility, and truly not academic achievement. We want our students to do their best. We want our students to learn, not to guess on what they should have known, but to know and to learn what they should know. We do not believe that we should give kids an option to opt out. We believe that we should tell kids and make kids and help kids and do whatever we can to do the work that's been assigned. To this end, we use, there we go, assessment information to drive learning. Whether it's formative or summative, what is it really telling us? We have to know that. We have to understand each child and what each child needs. And by these assessments, teachers every day in the classroom do differentiate what they're doing for each child. We need to use this information for learning. We need to figure out what is missing. If we allow students not to do homework or any other work, what does it really tell us? What does it tell the child, and what does it tell the teacher, and where do they go next?
So really the idea behind rethinking assessments and what we're doing in our classroom boils down to this big picture question. Does a student's grade at the end of the 9 weeks reflect their knowledge of content standards, that they have met the learning targets that we want them to reach along the way? If you think to different things like behavior and organization, did they use color? Was the project neat? Did they turn it in on time? If we allow those types of things to cloud our grading issues, how are we to truly know whether they've actually reached those content standards? For example, if you have a student who gets all A's on every assessment, clearly knows the material but turns a few assessments in on time, if we allow that to cloud our grading, then that student gets a B. How are we as stakeholders, as teachers, the parents, the district, to really know if that student actually mastered the material? The idea behind this is no, the student should actually have an A, but they do need to have that support to learn what to do to be able to turn these things in on time. So it's not just looking at the student and saying, here's your A, great job, sorry your work was late. But it is about giving them the support that they need to be able to learn how to do better at issues like that. So this is just a list of different times that a teacher has differentiated instruction, very simple things that we do. And certainly you as the board members, if we knew you as learners, we would be sure to have tailored our presentation tonight to reach each of you at where you are and to hopefully bring you up to the level that we want you to be by the end of our presentation with understanding the content behind what we're doing today. So rephrasing questions, extending deadlines, all of these things are good teaching and things that we do on a daily basis, but it shouldn't stop right here. We need to be looking at other things. When we talk about evidence-based practices and assessing for learning, we need to be taking that to things like homework, projects, reading assignments, and especially those tests. Again, to really be sure that what we're doing in our classroom does reflect a student's content knowledge and not the behavior or the participation in our class.
So if we are teaching in a responsive manner and providing appropriate challenges for our students, then a one-size-fits-all approach simply doesn't work in our classrooms. Life really is about formative assessment. How do we learn from our mistakes and then as a result continue to learn and grow? So shouldn't our schools reflect that same principle for our students? Because an assessment's really only as good as what we do with the information that we gain from that assessment. That's both true in life and also in school. But this isn't just about retests. This is also about meeting those needs of students and differentiating everything from reading assignments so that you are providing an assignment for a student that is appropriate or challenges just above that reading level. It's about putting students deliberately in certain groups, whether you want a homogeneous or a heterogeneous group, depending on the day's activity. And again, it's about meeting that specific needs of the students, and this is some of the best practice that's currently being used by the teachers on our staff. Zeros. Boy, that opens a can of worms. Everybody knows how devastating a zero is to a student's grade, and if you choose to add a zero in when you're trying to figure a student's grade, then the grade no longer represents what they understand about content knowledge. One of my students is sitting here tonight, and I won't put you on the spot, Alan, but my kids all hear me say that at the end of the 9 weeks, I want your grade to reflect what you know about U.S. history, not if it looked pretty, or if you turned it in on time, or if it was neat and organized. Yes, as a teacher, it's part of my job to work on those things, to work on organization and to help my students with all of that. But that shouldn't be reflected in the grade that they get on their report card at the end of the 9 weeks. Late work as well. I try to find creative ways to have students get that work turned in. I deal with parents when my students are turning assignments in late, so we can really find what the root of that problem is. But again, it should not be reflected in their grade at the end. Discussing these issues with parents, dealing with those kinds of things are all the things that our teachers are doing, but we're trying to make sure at the end of the 9 weeks that big picture question of does their grade reflect their understanding of that content knowledge is what's most important to us. One of my favorite analogies I've used a lot with teachers in my department that I've worked with is that as adults we get all kinds of redos. If you didn't pass your driver's exam the very first time, nobody told you were never allowed to drive. Or once you got your license, you could only drive on 80% of the roads and to stay off the interstates. Or an attorney that doesn't pass the bar exam the first time. He gets to take that, or she gets to take that exam again, and they're not allowed to only practice certain pieces of law. Well, if we're allowing redos there, then shouldn't my 8th grader get a redo on a colonization test? To me, that perspective just seems more important. Mastery of learning targets and of our state standards is what I want my students to understand. And if for some students that takes them a little longer, I'm okay with that. It's about mastery, not mastery at a certain date and a certain time that happens to be the test date. This quote's my favorite quote from the book, and I think it's a great way to sum up what we've been doing. My job is to make sure that my lessons are developmentally appropriate for all of the learners in my class, because one size simply does not fit all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Before you're seated, I wanted to check with the board to see if they had any questions or comments.
I just have one comment. As a former special education teacher and a parent, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we move on to consent. Do I have a motion to approve consent?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Passes. Next, we move on to action. Our first action item goes to Mr. McMichael. Fitness Center addition changes.
Yes, thank you. We have two change orders this evening. The first is with regard to the Fitness Center addition at Carmel High School. It's an add change order in the amount of $11,570. It's an electrical matter. The specifics are in your report, but this provides sufficient and additional capacity for electrical needs as a part of that project.
Thank you, Mr. McMichael. Do I have a motion to get this on the table? Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Nels. Discussion. Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, Leila. Roger, this additional money, I assume there's budget to cover that?
There is, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Let's take a vote. All in favor of supporting this recommendation?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next, we turn to Mr. McMichael again.
Thank you. The next change order I like better. This is a deduct change order in the amount of $8,528. This is in reference to the additional bay that was constructed this past summer at the West Side Transportation Center.
May I get a motion to bring this to the table?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. Well, it seems like we really enjoy these deductions.
That's
okay. Right. All in favor of supporting this recommendation?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Excellent. And let's see, moving on. Oh, we're to our reports. Extended School Enrichment Program. Mr. Dillon.
Thank you so very much for this opportunity to come tonight and share with you what I can truly say is one of the highlights of my job as Director of Student Services. I wear many hats for the district, as you know. Sometimes some of those jobs are a little bit difficult and challenging, but I am happy to tell you that this is the highlight of my job when I get to deal with our friends from Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation. I have been in my position for 10 years, and as part of my job, I oversee and act as the liaison for this program for the district. As you know, Indiana law requires that school systems offer an after-school program for grades K through 6. We also offer a before-school program. And we can do that ourselves, or we can contract with someone to do that for us. And I'm happy tonight to share with you two of our good friends that I enjoy working with, Michael Klitzing and Ben Johnson from the Parks, and they're going to share with you about our program.
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
First off, thank you very much for your time this evening. I greatly appreciate that. Tonight I'll just be touching on a few points of our program. Just to give a little background, we began our partnership with Carmel Clay Schools in the 2006-2007 school year. So we are currently in our 7th school year, and I believe, based upon the feedback that we have gained from parents, and also I'll be going through some information on our program, that we continue to see our program evolving and improving on a school year by school year basis. The first slide that I am going to touch on is simply based upon enrollment within our program. As I stated, in 2006-2007, we began our partnership with Carmel Clay Schools, and the two different charts here are, one, registration of students at the end of the first week of school, and then the second part is the enrollment at the conclusion of the school year. So as you can see based upon this chart, that on a year-by-year basis, we continue to see enrollment increasing in our program. Real quickly, on the beginning of this school year, 1,724 students. Just as a reference, at the end of the first week of school, we had more students than at the conclusion of the entire school year of 07-08. Also, as you can see, currently the 1,981 students is our enrollment numbers at the as of last Friday. So just touching on that, we can see that we have more students now than what we did at the end of 08-09. So we are continuing to see growth within our program, which I believe is due in large part to the positive word from parents communicating with each other. The next slide, and I'll just let you know, I only have 2 more after this, so if you want to crank up the timer, I can go into the 2-minute drill here. The information on this is a survey that we send out to parents and guardians of the Extended School Enrichment Program on a semester-by-semester basis. The very first school year, 06-07, we did this at the conclusion of the school year. We decided that we wanted to get feedback generated on a semester-by-semester basis. So as you can see on this, we have 9 different areas that we chart going on caring atmosphere, safe environment, building relationships, positive atmosphere. Many of those areas are touched on, and I just want to touch on a few in this. One provides a caring atmosphere for their child. It's the most positive feedback we've ever gained from that. We also saw a very, very high score in providing a safe environment for their child. I strongly believe that is the most important criteria for any program, and that is providing as a starting point a very safe environment for every child within our program. A couple accomplishments on this. We increased every category average from fall to spring semester for the very first time. We also obtained an overall average of 4+ for 6 consecutive surveys for the very first time. This is on a 1 to 5 scale, so obviously we are striving for a 5 in every single category. Next, something we are also very, very proud of. Since the inception of the program, we have provided financial assistance to those households that are in need to utilize our program. In the little less than 2.5 years, so going back to the 2010-2011 school year, we have provided just under $700,000 of financial assistance to 589 students. As it states on here, we have been doing this since the inception of the program, but I wanted to paint a somewhat more recent picture of that so you could have that information to see that we most definitely make it a point to make sure that those households and those parents that need to use our program and we are able to provide that financial assistance so it's accessible to all students within the district. Finally, this is an addition, and I strongly believe an improvement with our program. Beginning with the first school year, once again going back to 06-07, we as a staff at each one of the 11 elementary schools conducted bi-monthly emergency preparedness drills. What we were doing for all school years up to this current school year is we were doing that without student participation. So we were doing dry runs with our staff members on various emergencies. What happened last spring semester, most definitely a positive. Carmel Clay Schools, Carmel Clay Parks and Recreation, as well as school resource officers, one in particular, Officer DJ Sheff, was extremely important in this process, and I want to make sure that I mention his name. He made this a top priority to make sure that we were included in our emergency preparedness, so I want to make sure that I mention his name specifically. It was a unified team to establish emergency preparedness plans, and beginning this school year, we are adding in, and this is obviously very important, live drills with student participation, and all of this has come in due part due to the unified team to establish 11 plans for each particular school. So that is the information that I wanted to provide to you tonight, And once again, thank you very much for your time. I will hand it over to my supervisor, Mr. Klitzen.
Members of the board, thank you again for the opportunity to serve Carmel Clay schools and the parents and children of this community through extended school enrichment. We've been very proud of the partnership we've had with the school district since 2006-2007, and we hope to have the opportunity to continue to serve our community through this program as we move forward. We think this represents really the best in government partnership. We have units of government that are working together to serve a shared community, to keep the resources within the community. One of the commitments that we made when we took over the program on your behalf back in 2006 is that we were committed to reinvesting in the program. As the scholarship numbers that been highlighted illustrate, that's one of the areas that we've been able to do and we're glad to do, and we think it's very important. We're in a community obviously viewed with much wealth, and we're very fortunate because of that, but it's also important to highlight that not all of our residents share in that, and as you as a school board and the faculty and staff know here, it's very important to make sure that we're serving the entire community, and we continue to be dedicated to do so. Additionally, one of the things that we've felt very important with the program is to reinvest in our staff. After our first year, we've always had full-time site supervisors in each of the 11 elementary schools. To add to the quality of the program, we made sure that all of our assistant site supervisors are also now full-time staff. And I think that's only add to the professionalism and retention of outstanding staff that we have within the program. And we continue to look at ways, whether it's through staff training, obviously making sure that we're getting the input of the students and the parents and guardians to make sure that we're continually striving for the excellence that this community expects of all of their service providers and units of government. And we certainly strive to do that. That's probably one of the things that I'm also the most proud of, is that while I think we have one of the best before and after school programs in the state of Indiana, if not the country, I also commend Ben and his staff for not settling where we are, always looking for ways for improvement, always taking that feedback, and even if it's a subtle adjustment based on a comment from a principal or a parent or a teacher or a student, I think it only helps the program. And again, we certainly appreciate the opportunity to work with Carmel Clay Schools in the program. Look forward to hopefully the opportunity to continue to do so for many years to come, and be happy to address any questions the board may have at this time.
Well, thank you very much for coming. And before I open it up to my fellow board members, I would like to just say thank you. I've been into many of the schools before and after school, and I'm always very impressed with how smoothly your staff are able to facilitate the program. So thank you for that. And I will let others have questions before I go ahead. Mrs. Knowles?
Yes, it's not a question, but I am the board's liaison to the Parks Board, and I'm beginning my third year as on that, which has been a very interesting thing for me to do. And I've been impressed by Ben's presentations at the Parks Board's meetings, and how well they're doing with the program, the summer camps, the cost recovery, the leadership that Ben has provided for this program. And I wanted him to come to the board and give that report to us, because we don't often see what they're doing. I do, but they don't. So thank you again for everything you've done for the students.
Thank you.
Thank you, Layla. I, too, would like to add my thanks and commendation for a job well done. We appreciate the excellent report. And with consent of the rest of the board, could we please have our liaison express gratitude to the director of the parks and to the board.
Yes, we have a meeting tomorrow night, so I can do that.
How about tomorrow night?
I just want to say one thing that I think is really important. Back from my time as the Parks Liaison, I took special note when we went through the budgets, and this program is a self-sufficient program. So when it produces revenue, it's put straight back in, whether it would be staff or supplies, with the number of kids. And I thought that was really important that it's a separate budget, not to be mixed, and the revenues not to be mixed. So I just wanted to point that out, since to add to what you said, because I think that's important to know. Thanks.
I did have one question. I was quite impressed with the ability of your scholarship and the number, nearly $700,000. My question to you is, how is that funded? Is that through the Parks Department, or how are you able to offer such a fabulous opportunity for our families?
As Mrs. Hackett indicated, the program is completely self-sufficient, so the revenues that we generate through the program provide sufficient funds to cover all of our operating expenses, which gives us the ability to provide that financial assistance. So it's through the program itself that we're able to serve the community in that way.
Well, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And next we have a riveting review from Mr. McMichael, financial update.
Thank you. Okay. Well, let me begin by reviewing some of the assumptions that I made in providing this information to the board. Most of these assumptions have not changed from the last time I gave an update, but there are a couple of items that have changed and that have some significance. I would point out, with regard to our 2012 expenditures, we really have not had any changes. I don't believe we've had any changes here in terms of assumptions, other than beyond what you had seen at the last presentation. However, in 2013, which is really reflecting a lot of 2012-13 school year, although our budget, as you know, is on a calendar year, I have made some adjustments in terms of the assumptions, specifically with regard to revenue. Since the last time we met, we've received information with regard to our 2011 referendum and the fact that the community's assessed value has declined about 3%, and that's having a negative impact on our referendum because it's based on a fixed tax rate, and so either the lower or the higher the assessed value, the more or less money we receive. So as a result of that declining assessment, excuse me, we have decreased revenue projected now for 2013 with regard to the referendum funds of $489,000. With regard to expenditures, I've made a number of changes in the assumptions. You'll see here under salary, I've assumed, and this reflects the last best offer that Andy had referred to earlier, because that currently is the most current information that I have. And so I've assumed a 2% salary increase, the elimination of the 403B match, which was then essentially replaced in the salary, so that the net salary increase is reflecting a 1% increase. And by the way, the employees then, if they choose, they still can participate in their own retirement program because we have voluntary 403Bs, so they can shelter that money if they choose. I've also assumed the 0.5% salary stipend and the 0.5% salary bonus. The other items, I believe, remain the same. We had our insurance premiums renew in October, so we have that now is not an assumption. We know what that increase is and will be for the better part of 2013. Excuse me. Also in 14, when we get to 14, we no longer have a state formula, so that will be determined next summer. But for purposes of this projection, I've continued to use the current formula, which I know will not be the formula in 2014, but again, it's the only formula that I have. And so I've continued to use that formula. I've also assumed a decline of 46 students, and that's simply reflecting our most recent demographic report from our demographer. Now, under expenditures, I've assumed no salary increases, not because I think there will or will not be salary increases, but again, I don't know, number one. And secondly, as you see the projections on finances, I've somewhat purposely frozen every expenditure account that you have any control over at all. I've continued to provide a 10% increase in insurance because, again, you're not in a position to determine what the premiums are going to be. And likewise with utility rates and so forth. And then the assumption on turnover for teachers, I believe it remains the same. Now, in summary, then, in terms of the finances, I'd like to begin this by saying that the district's in very solid financial position. I would begin by pointing out our cash reserves. This year, I projected that those reserves will approach $14 million, which is about 14% of our budget. And that's very positive news. The state, most of the state agencies recommend a minimum operating balance of 8%. They do not make a recommendation on the maximum balance. I've offered you my opinion, and I will offer it to you again this evening, and that is that I believe, as your business manager, that having a balance of 10 or 11% is quite adequate. And therefore, I've, along with Dr. Swenson, have recommended to the board that I believe we can continue to be responsible and financially sound if you spend some of the cash that we have available. And that's reflected in our best offer as far as bargaining. Excuse me. Now, I do have an opinion on how the money is spent because this cash reserve is an accumulated funds. And so we do have to be careful as to how you spend money. Because if you begin, since this is accumulated funds, we use the term one-time expenditures. If you spend this for in any way that's not anticipated, or at least not necessarily recurring, then that I think is a financially sound approach. If the money is, if our cash reserves are spent to cover recurring costs, then we have to be concerned that will continue to deplete the balance, and it won't be just a one-time depletion. So I do have some opinions on that, but I would again say that we are in a position to spend some of the cash. In fact, there's a point where the only reason we have the cash and money is to deliver an educational program, and so while we cannot do that in the best way if we're not financially stable, but there is a point where there's really no purpose in accumulating cash just for the sake of accumulating it. So I wanted to begin there. Then I want to move to point out our revenue, starting with 2011 through 2000, as compared to 2012. And you can see the revenue coming into the district increases significantly in 2012 as compared to 2011. That's primarily due to two sources of revenue. One is what's referred to in the report as the jobs funding, federal jobs funding. That is stimulus funds that Carmel received in an amount almost $2.7 million. Those funds were expended this year. They've already been expended at this point, but they were one-time monies. The second area has to do with our most recent referendum, referred to as the 2011 referendum. As the board knows, we actually have two referendums at the moment, one that started in 2006 and another, the newest one that started in 2011. But this year, as I previously reported, the 2011 referendum actually increased $2.7 million because of change in legislation which allowed the school district to capture the additional revenue as a result of the referendum that previously had gone to what's referred to as the TIF districts, or tax incremental financing districts. So that money was going to the redevelopment board, and so but there was a change in legislation which essentially moved that money over to the school corporation, because after all, it is a school referendum that was passed, and there obviously were legislators that felt that those funds should benefit the school and not some other governmental entity. So that was a significant increase in revenue. So those two alone, about $5.4 million of additional revenue in 2012, and those funds went directly to increasing our cash reserves. Now in 2013, the picture is not quite as bright. As you can see from the totals here under revenue, our 2013 revenue I projected at $99 million, which is down from $104 million. That's, again, primarily due to the loss of the job funds, which we had in 12, will not have in 13. Also, a loss of our 2006 referendum because, as the board knows, that referendum expires at the end of this year, and we've known that. That's nothing new. In fact, was anticipated and planned as a part of the new referendum that we have. And then finally, the reduction that I referenced earlier to the 2011 referendum, that is new, which was another $489,000. So we are showing considerably less revenue in 13 as compared to 12. I think it's worth noting at this point that if you compare the state formula revenue, which is the basic revenue that's funding our general operating fund, along with our local referendum that the community has seen fit to pass. And if you compare those two sources of revenue, which is over 80% of the total revenue, from 12 to 13, the increase is $299,000, which on a $100 million budget is not very much. In fact, our increase for health insurance this year, going into 13, was $850,000. So the increase from the state certainly does not come even close to covering some of the basic increases, utilities and insurance and so forth, that we know we're going to have. So that is concerning to me as we look to the future. In fact, if you compare the 2011 state revenue as compared to the 2013 revenue over a period of 2 years, the revenue goes up $950,000, which sounds a little better. That's a little less than 1% increase over 2 years. However, our student enrollment went up 191 students during that same period, and the average that we're receiving for funding is about $5,000 per student, which happens to be about $950,000. So absent the growth, the actual revenue from 2011 through 2013 from the recurring revenue from the state would be pretty close to zero. And so hopefully the state formula will improve as we go forward. There's many of us are pretty anxious about what's may come out of the state legislature this year, and we're all aware that we've had been in the midst of a recession. But in our business, parents are still sending the kids to school whether it's a recession or not. So there's been no cutback in our operating expenses. Quite to the contrary, they continue to go up every year. So those would be the highlights that I would present this evening, given the hour. There's some detail behind this that details the expenditures in particular, which you've seen before. There's not a lot of change in the expenditures from what was projected 3 months ago, but there have been some changes, as I noted, with regard to revenue. So with that, I'll respond to questions that you might have.
Questions from the board? Thank you, Mr. McMichael.
Thank you.
Mr. Phillips, we'll begin with you.
Thank you, Layla. First of all, Roger, this is very clear and very helpful information. Thank you for pulling this together for us.
Thank you.
A couple of things. You've assumed that our so-called last best offer would be actually accepted as the basis for our contract with the association. If, on the other hand, we were to achieve agreement with the association and our actual best offer were to be agreed upon, what impact, just generally speaking, could we expect to see in your projections here?
Really what would change is in 2013, that number, our cash reserves would decline about $3.5 million to get close to $10 million, or about 10% of our operating balance. That really is the obvious change.
And of course, going forward, that $3.5 million would no longer be there, so that each subsequent year would be reduced by $3.5 million then. You've spent it.
Not an accumulated amount. Yes, we spent it, but I would make clear that making that change to this report and then projecting on through 2014, I would project that the balance in 14 would decline a bit beyond the $3.5 million, because a part of that best offer also doesn't increase recurring expenses more so than the so-called last best offer. So there's really two major components in that best offer. One is that the entire amount of expenditure just for the calendar year is about $3.5 million more money, but only a portion of that, but also a portion of that is an increase in recurring costs going forward, and so, but certainly not the entire amount. So I would project that our balance in 2014 certainly would decline, starting with the $3.5 million, but it may also decline a bit more than that, depending on a lot of things, depending on the state formula. But again, with everything else that I've assumed here, if all the other assumptions stayed the same, and that was the only change that was made, then I would project that 14 would decline a bit beyond the $3.5 million that would be spent in 2013. But again, not nearly all of that. As I recall, I think there's at least maybe a 1% difference, additional recurring cost going into with the best offer as compared to the last best offer. So,
thank you. And secondly, I believe you're indicating that because of declining enrollment and so forth, we're actually looking at a very minimal figure as far as so-called new money, $300,000 or so.
Well, that money's been, in 2013, as compared to 2012, the state basic grant and the referendum revenue combined, we're showing a $299,000 increase in revenue, and that's been certified by the state. So that's not my number. That's what the state says it's going to be. Now, going after 13, however, we have no state formula. And certainly I don't know what the enrollment's going to be. I've assumed here that the enrollment's going to actually decline by 46 students simply because that's the projection that our paid demographer provided for us. The state formula, I've used the current formula, which I know will not be in existence in 2014. In fact, I'm hoping the one that is passed will treat us better than the current one. But I have no way of knowing that, and I'd like to be more optimistic than I am.
We appreciate optimism. I guess I'm trying to understand the relationship of the $300,000 or the $299,000 to our last so-called last best offer. Could you kind of talk a little bit about that?
Well, that in both offers, really, that's included in as a part of the revenue and so forth. What really allows us to even make the last best offer, let alone the best offer, much better than what it would be if we were just looking to be able to if we were constrained with just the so-called new money or the additional revenue that were certified actually to receive in 2013. We wouldn't be able to support either one of those offers because we would have $299,000, and as I said earlier, that wouldn't even cover our health insurance. It barely would cover our utility rate increases. So what enables us to provide more than that is the fact that going into 13, we are not spending, really it's the most recent revenue has been the passage of the referendum. And so with the increase in the referendum as a result of that TIF district item that I mentioned, primarily that alone was $2.7 million more money in 2012 than we had received in 2011. And so we start by going into 13 not spending all the recurring revenue that we're receiving in 2012. So that primarily enables us to make the proposals that we've made, either one of the proposals that we've made. And so, again, I really am not intending to paint a pessimistic picture here, because I think we're in very, very stable position at the moment. But I do have concerns as we look out and see at least the last few years as to the amount of the minimal funding that's been provided by the state. And fortunately, we've had a community that's significantly supplemented that. But as we commit all those funds, then we will be dependent upon the state formula at that point as we go forward.
Thank you.
Yes, I just have one question. You didn't go through what happens with full-day kindergarten and the funding from that, so could you explain what happened?
Yes. You'll see here that in 2012, we're showing full-day kindergarten grant and fees at almost $3.3 million, significantly up from the $2.4 million in 2011, and also up as compared to projecting forward the $2.5 million in 2013. Now, the reason for that is this. From January to June full-day of 2012, full-day kindergarten was funded partially by a state grant and significantly by parents paying fees. And so the parents paid fees, as they have been for several years, from January, and they're still paying this fee. I mean, from January, I'm sorry, they did last year from January to June, at the end of second semester of last school year. Then, now the state has passed new legislation that most of us have read about that fully funds full-day kindergarten. Doesn't quite fully fund it in Carmel, but nevertheless, it's significantly more money than we had received in the past. They are distributing that entire year of funding for the school year 12-13. The state is giving us all the money for the whole school year in December of this year. And so what we've got in 2012 then is overlapping revenue as we transition from a fee-based program to a state-funded program. We've got that overlap, and and that results in inflating or increasing at least the kindergarten funding in 2012 by about $750,000. That, of course, won't continue in 13. In 13, we'll be through that transition, and it'll drop back down to the amount per pupil. And since the state, one of the good things they've done is with regard to kindergarten is they have funded that on a per pupil basis, which is to say we get $2,400, I believe, for each student. Regardless of how many students enroll, we get $2,400. A more typical way for state funding is to say we've got this pot of money, and depending on how many kids in the state of Indiana enroll for kindergarten, you get your fair share, which means that the more students enroll, the less you get per student. And so we much prefer the funding as it is on a per pupil basis, because you don't start losing money per student regardless of what the enrollment is. So that's the explanation on full-day kindergarten.
Other questions? I do have one question. At what point will we have the new funding formula so we can project for 2014?
Well, depends how well the state legislature gets along with each other. If they pass a budget, and they will pass a budget eventually, but if they pass it timely, then it'll be in late spring.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, moving on to superintendent's report. Mr.
Thank you, ma'am. Three very quick notes, just to ensure, and I know amongst the board there's no confusion. The best offer and the last best offer, but our focus is obviously on the best offer, but both are for only the current school year. And for the current school year, there is no change in the hours that our colleagues work. So then any calculation that may or may not be made in that regard should be made on the current hours that people are working. There's been no change. Second, I too am very concerned based on where the state may or may not be headed with funding. Our reporters in the media within the last 24 hours have indicated that there's already discussion amongst legislators that there may not in fact be enough of a surplus at the state level to, shall we say, spend, divide, or send any of that money anywhere that would involve education. Now, they've obviously got a lot of work to do, but within that media report came the projection that state revenues will in fact now start to decline. I don't know the source of that decline. So that I am very concerned that, once again, schools in general become a ball in a pinball machine being bounced around even before the legislature has even begun. And that concern is heightened when, as the board knows, and as we have reported in public session, our school corporation receives the third lowest per pupil funding in the state of Indiana, ahead of only 2 other schools who have new virtual schools. But for the sake of emphasis, this is very troubling. And then the third item, I would just recall to the historians here at the front table and those listening that not that long ago, the state visited all schools with a massive shortfall, and ours was in the amount of $3.8 million. We never have received that back. And in fact, the shortfall, in other words, the passage, if you please, the elimination of the 2006 referendum and the shortfall of $3.8 million combined were part of, as you will well recall, the referendum monies that were made available. And I know you remember as historians that we were on the brink of, had the referendum not passed, massive cuts in staffing. So that the question is sort of a red herring. The dollars for the referendum have gone to all the right places, to teachers, to reducing class size, and to ensuring that our school corporation has, in a very fiscally conservative way, accounted for shortfalls and accounted for the reduction of funding that otherwise, had we not accounted for, we would be in some very serious financial straits. So those 3 items, I think, are germane to very important ideas that we've shared, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Swenson. Board members, do you have anything you'd like to share this evening? Okay, before I adjourn, I did want to remind everybody that we will have only one meeting in December. That'll be Monday, December 17th. And with that, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your good words, and I wanted to thank the Parks Department guys
Yes.
before they depart.
What's not been Michael Quincy.
Thank you so much. Great to appreciate what you guys
So